So for years now on CK Productions YouTube and TikTok pages, I've made many Paper Mario inspired animations, and now I'm going to break down the steps on how I made these animations come to life. It was an interesting process because when I started, I didn't have much to base it off of. There weren't any tutorials online specifically for animating Paper Mario characters, so I basically had to come up with a method from scratch just based off of me watching how they moved and were animated in the games. But what's great about this type of animation is that it's reflective of the field of character animation as a whole. So following this process will actually help you learn widely used skills that can be applied in a professional environment. Of course, you most likely won't be using any Mario characters, but this style of animation can be used for your own characters easily. So if you want to get some practice in and follow along, I've happily provided the assets for Mario and Luigi and their home. The programs needed to follow along are After Effects and Illustrator. This was my first step into character animation. Now I'm doing it along with MoGraph and VFX professionally. So this, and along with a lot of work I did for CK Productions, really helped me jumpstart my career. Just seriously, just making fun videos on YouTube as a joke turned into me making a living doing something I love to do. So keep creating and you never know what could happen. Without further ado, let's go. All right, so I got a first Mario asset open here in Illustrator. And what you're gonna see is this has been an asset that was designed straight here in Illustrator. It wasn't designed by me, it was designed by a friend of mine in college. Basically, how it was designed part by part, like limb for limb. We literally put together Mario limb for limb here. So kind of going in here, we can see that we have layers for all the different body parts here. And it's very important to keep the layers separated here because that's what's gonna make it easier for us to work with them in After Effects. And basically the way that these were designed it was just based off of literally just references right from the game, almost directly replicating all of the design aspects of all of the different parts of his body here. So you've got paths for gradients, you got paths for outlines, and using simple shape layers was how all of these were put together, just keeping in mind of the shading here, of the gradients that are on here, and the different line weights for everything. Too, just going through using the shape tools and the pen tools in Illustrator basically just to mimic exactly what the shapes of his body were from the game. And you can kind of do the same for your own characters and stuff, using simple shapes, using references, and using different line weights and stuff. As long as you're building them out limb by limb, you can create your own characters from scratch. It's just the most important thing is if you're building it for animation is you want them all to be separated like this. And the other thing you'll also notice here, there's multiple instances of the hand. You want to make sure that if you have any drastic differences in the hands, in the mouth, in the feet or whatever, that you make those multiple instances of that. When we go into After Effects, we use After Effects to toggle which of those instances will be used and when they change and how they interact with each other. So speaking of After Effects, let's just jump right into After Effects. That's where the majority of our tutorial is going to be in. I have the Mario house scene set up here. And when you're setting up a scene, it's going to be multiple different composition layers. And you're going to start off with your base composition layer. This is going to be like your master layer here. And that's where you import your scene layer. And the scene layer, basically if I open it up in Illustrator, it's the same way that we put together the scene for the Mario character, except it's just you have different paths and different shape layers for every one of these walls, every one of these pieces of furniture. And the designer did a good job here. They set it up so that there's different elements. You see foreground elements here, background elements. You don't have to put everything on their own layer here, but layers that are sort of grouped together on a similar plane typically are good to keep in their own grouped layer here. So when we import that into After Effects, it comes in as a composition. You have all your elements here, and this is actually where the majority of your work is going to happen, not in the master comp, but more inside of the scene layer here. What we're going to do is we're going to start populating our scene with characters. I'm going to go in and add some characters to the scene. This is all my list of different characters here. I'm going to add in Mario here. See, there's Mario that we have in the scene. You can also see that Mario is his own composition here. We want to keep it that way because we don't want there to be this many layers in the same thing here, because that kind of creates a little bit of a messy composition in our timeline here. We want to make things a little bit clean. So it also works out that this composition basically kind of acts as a null layer for everything, where I can move all the individual body parts together as his body. For example, if he was going to walk across the screen or jump around, this is the layer that I would do all of those animations on. This is the composition where I do all the animations for the individual body parts. What's going to be super important before we do any type of animation is you want to properly set up our hierarchy of body parts and our anchor points. So our anchor points are these little dots in the middle here. That's where the origin of our rotation, the origin of our scale, position, all of that happens from our anchor point. And right now the anchor point is all in the middle of his body here. If you were an animation in your body, think about each of your body parts and where its anchor point would be. It's basically where the joint, like in your arm is, where your arm meets your shoulder, where your leg meets your hip, where your head meets your neck. That's your anchor points to all your bodies. So we have to replicate that with Mario here. So we're going to first go through and do that. Left arm here. The left arm is going to rotate at the end of his arm where it reaches his shoulder there. For his mouth, we're going to put that at the top of his mouth because his mouth is going to animate up and down. The head, we're going to move the anchor point down to his neck. For the left foot, going to put the anchor point right here at the top of his foot. The body, if you look at the games, the body always moves from the bottom. And for the right shoe, put the top of the shoe, right hand at the shoulder, and make sure you do that for the ones that are hidden too. So at the shoulder. All right, so from here, the next thing we need to do is create our parent hierarchy, because what you're gonna see here, what happens is when I move the head, his eyes and mouth are not moving with him. And when I move the body, nothing else moves with him. And you can really kind of tell what should be parented to each other by just moving your own body and figuring out like what moves with it. From our body, we're gonna parent to our body by using the parent tool here, the head, the arms. Now just the arms that are present. I'm gonna actually change this to having the right arm closed be the one that's present here and parent that to the body. Now we see when we move the body, move this. Now, obviously the mouth and the eyes are not parented, so we're gonna parent those to the head here. The one thing that you see here is the other instance of the eyes, the closed eyes. So those technically should be off right now. And that kind of leads us to our next point here. Anything that is a multiple instance of an object should be parented to the first instance of it. So the eyes closed should be parented to the eyes open. The left hand open should be parented to the left arm. Right hand open, parented to the right arm. And now everything should move just fine. From here, we can start kind of doing our animation. And the first thing that we typically do, or at least I do in my process, is I line up the voice. I'm just gonna use one of these voices I've been doing for a project that I'm working on with these animations. You're not gonna really hear it, but you're gonna listen for when they're talking. And then you're going to go to your mouth and just have it do some animation here to lip sync what the character would be saying here. So for these characters, their base animation would be to 0, so you don't see the mouth. And every time they would move, you go in and you'd scale this up to an open position. Though how much you would open it is sort of based off of how loud they might be talking and how expressive that you want them to talk. It's a pretty simple process here where all you would do is just go through and repeat this over again, have them open and close for basically all of the syllables that they're saying. For this particular animation, there really isn't any alternate mouth patterns or anything. So all we have to do is just follow this talking pattern for basically the entire day of the speech. It can be a little bit time consuming, but what you can do is if you can kind of copy and paste the keyframes for a mouth open, mouth closed, kind of over and over again. If it's going to be a long speech, just make sure you're going through and just kind of retiming things as you go. And something I like to do if it's a long sentence they're saying, I like to have them not completely close their mouth. I also like to not have them open it all the way to 100% all the time too. I like to close it when they're done with this sentence. I like to also add in easy ease for these as well, and also put in motion blur. I like to put in motion blur for all of these. So kind of just default have those in there. And so you've gone through your speech. Typically what I like to do when they're talking and stuff is to make them a little bit more expressive when they're talking. So he might say, when he says Luigi, he might do something like his body might jump up a bit. So using just the keyframes here, I'll just make his body jump up a bit. And now that everything's parented, everything will move along with it. And we can also do like, let's say his head will tilt back when he does that. I'll have his head tilt back too, and add a little bit of an ease to that. I like to, when they do kind of sudden movements, I like to add an ease, and I like to go into the graph editor a bit and just move this, but it all depends on exactly what you're doing. So it's going Luigi and trying to get his attention. You know, sometimes I like, if they're being really expressive, I like to move their arms with it. Just with the rotation tool, you can easily just make keyframes with their arms. And let's say he's really excited. He's really trying to get Luigi's attention here. What he's gonna do is he's gonna raise his arms up, and he's gonna open his arms while he raises them. And that's why I have the other instance of the arms. We'll show how to do that real quick here. So raise both of his arms up. And then what we do here is to make it switch to the other instance of the arms. All we have to do is we're gonna make a cut in the middle of the arm animation here. Delete that one, put our open, left hand open here on, make a cut here. And so what's gonna happen is halfway through, it's gonna switch to the other layer. And now clearly we see we have to go a little farther with it. So we can see it seamlessly switches to the other layer here, making it look like he's opening his arm. We can do the same thing with the one down here. And then we have Mario saying Luigi's name and being animated with it too. And that's just how animation works. That's how cartoons are. They're very emotive with their hands and their body. One other little thing we can show here is, not a lot of people will notice, but just adds a little sense of realism, is just to make their eyes blink. We start with kind of the same thing that we did before. We don't have to add any keyframes to this, but we go to the eyes open, make a little gap here, go to the eyes closed and cut it to fill that gap, and then put the eyes closed from hidden to on. And you can see he blinks there. Let's do a simple walk cycle with Mario. So let's say he says Luigi and is gonna walk over to him. We're gonna go to one of our shoes here. We're gonna put a keyframe in the position and the rotation. Move over a few frames and put our foot into place. For the first position, the foot will be in here. So I'm just gonna move this left arm, kind of take it off just so I can put the foot exactly where I want it to here. And I've used basically the reference from the actual game to where how their feet move. But for this particular walk cycle, basically what happens is one foot goes to the back of the body, one foot goes to the front of the body, and they switch every time. I'm gonna go to the right shoe, do the same. Going to change the keyframes, goes a little bit quicker. Also going to make these ease as well. Just because easing's fun. All right, cool. So that looks like a good speed there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna move forward a little bit and just about the same width of what we did before between these keyframes. And then we're gonna switch the feet. So this foot is now going to be in the front where this foot was, and now this foot is going to be in the back. And all we have to do is take this and just duplicate it, copy and paste the keyframes, making sure it's the same width apart. And we got our first couple keyframes here for the walk cycle of the feet. I'm gonna go ahead and put the arm back so he looks less odd here. And what I'm gonna do is, to make this even quicker for myself, I'm just going to take this group of 3, copy, paste, 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 and do the same thing for the other leg here. So we got a pretty decent walk cycle for the feet here, and then we're gonna have him come to a complete stop. So that all we have to do is grab the first set of keyframes, put those there. So the other thing we need to do for this is, when you walk, you don't just stay completely still like that. Your body bobs up and down, so we're gonna have Mario's body bob up and down too. So I'm gonna go through and just add little keyframes where the body goes up and down in between all of these keyframes here. So every time the feet switch, I'm gonna have his body bob up and down each time. So he's walking. He might talk while he's walking. You might have him use his arms to express anything while he's walking. But for a typical walk cycle, all that we need to do is to do that there. Now, to make him actually walk within the scene, let's go back to our scene here and place him where we want to place him. Let's put Luigi in here as a reference. Got Luigi here. I gave him a little mushroom iPhone to be looking off of, and then Mario's gonna come over and get his attention. So I'm gonna take him, spin him around, and yeah, so he's in place. And I've already gone through and done all of the syncing and the moving of him on the table there. So what I'm gonna have is, he says something here, and then Mario says Luigi, Luigi looks, and then Mario's going to walk over and tell him something. So when he starts his walk cycle, we're just gonna add a position keyframe here, move forward a bit, and when he stops, another position keyframe. See, so there he goes, and he walks across the room. And obviously, you would go through and adjust this for whatever speed that you want. Maybe you'll have him start back a little farther so he covers more ground. Whatever works best for the scene that you're doing. And from here, you basically go ahead and do whatever actions and interactions that you need based off of that method there. If you're doing anything extra, for example, like the phone that's in his hand, how that was done, all I did was take the phone asset here and added it to Luigi's character comp here, and then parented it to his left arm. So anytime he moves his left arm, the phone moves as well, and then, did any actual rotation animation specifically for the cell phone I did as well. Yeah, so basically, all you do is you go through and you do any type of work that you need to do within this layer here in terms of their positioning. So we can see I made an animation of Luigi getting out of the chair. What I would do there is just do position keyframe and have him move out of the chair with proper easing to that. And then see Luigi walks away with his phone. So I would do a keyframe for that as well. And yeah, so that's pretty much the basis of any type of animation that I would do with this, and how this can be applied to other animations that you do. This hierarchy of body parts here, parenting and then using the anchor point, is stuff that is used for a variety of different animation purposes. You can create pretty much any type of characters that you want in Illustrator and use the same concept. Like, for example, like a character like this that you might find on like a stock website or create yourself. You see it, this will come with an Illustrator file that has all of the different limbs and body parts separated here, and maybe it gives you even a couple of options. Yeah, so that's about it for this tutorial. Feel free to download the free assets that I've included. They'll only be available for a limited time, so make sure you get on and download them as soon as you can. Hopefully this helps you jumpstart into character animation in After Effects. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the Paper Mario videos that I make for CK Productions and on TikTok as well. With that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye everyone.